You ever notice how, in certain moments, you'd rather say nothing than try to explain yourself? Someone asks a simple question, "Why did you do that?" And your brain freezes. Not because you don't have an answer, but because the idea of turning that answer into words feels exhausting, risky, almost unsafe. So you shrug, or change the subject, or go quiet. And afterward, maybe you replay the moment in your head, crafting the perfect explanation you never gave. Funny how silence feels calm in the moment, and loud later. This isn't about being shy or antisocial, and it's not about lacking opinions. For many people, silence feels safer than explaining, and there's a quiet psychology behind why. Let's look at a few types of minds where silence isn't emptiness but armor. There's the first type, the internal processor. You know this one well. Maybe it's you. Someone asks what you think, and your instinct is to pause. Not a dramatic pause, a long, uncomfortable one. Your thoughts aren't missing. They're stacking, layering, arguing with each other. You're running simulations. If I say this, they might hear that. If I explain it this way, it might come out wrong. Explaining yourself, for you, isn't a quick download. It's a translation project. And translations lose meaning. So instead of risking a distorted version of your thoughts walking out into the world, you keep them inside where they're still whole. Silence here isn't avoidance. It's quality control. Then there's the emotionally economical type. These are people who've learned, often the hard way, that explaining yourself costs energy, and not everyone deserves the expense. Maybe you've explained your feelings before and watched them get minimized, corrected, or casually misunderstood. You're overthinking. That's not what you meant. You're too sensitive. Over time, your nervous system takes notes. It learns that silence is cheaper. Fewer misunderstandings. Fewer debates that turn into defenses. So now, when a situation feels emotionally inefficient, you opt out. You don't argue. You don't clarify. You conserve. Silence becomes a form of self-respect. Another profile is the social risk minimizer. Picture this. You're in a group setting. A conversation drifts into opinions, values, interpretations. You have a nuanced take. Not extreme, not simple, not easily summarized. You sense that explaining it would require context, patience, and a listener who actually wants to understand. But the room doesn't feel like that place. So you stay quiet. Not because you're afraid of disagreement, but because you understand social friction. Explaining yourself can subtly shift how people see you. It can reclassify you. Silence keeps you unlabeled, neutral, harder to misfile. In uncertain social terrain, silence feels like safer ground. Then there's the people who associate explanation with vulnerability. For them, explaining isn't just sharing information, it's revealing motive, intention, inner logic, and that feels like opening a door. Maybe earlier in life, their explanations were used against them, twisted, remembered selectively, or brought up later at the worst possible time. So now, silence becomes a boundary. Not a wall, a filter. You still feel deeply. You still think intensely. But you only explain when you sense genuine safety. Until then, quiet feels like protection. But here's the twist. Sometimes silence feels safer not because the world is unsafe, but because we're not yet comfortable with our own reasons. There's a type of quiet that comes from unresolved clarity. You feel something strongly, but you haven't fully articulated it to yourself. Explaining it out loud would force definition, commitment, and definition can collapse ambiguity, which can be scary if you're still exploring what you believe. Silence buys you time. It lets your inner narrative stay flexible. And then there's a subtler reason that often goes unnoticed. Explaining yourself invites negotiation. Once words are out there, they can be challenged, reshaped, or dismissed. Silence, oddly enough, preserves autonomy. No one can argue with what you didn't say. For some people, that control feels grounding. But silence isn't always peaceful. Over time, it can turn into isolation. You might start feeling unseen, not because others ignore you, but because you never give them access. The same silence that protects you can also distance you. It can make people assume you don't care, don't feel, don't think, when in reality, you're doing all three, intensely. So the question becomes, when is silence a shield? And when is it a cage? Healthy silence feels chosen, calm, intentional. Unhealthy silence feels heavy, reactive, regretful. The difference isn't how much you speak. It's whether you feel safe with yourself afterward. If you recognize yourself in any of these patterns, you're not broken. You're not socially deficient. You've adapted. Your mind found a strategy that worked, maybe beautifully, at some point. But strategies aren't meant to be permanent. They're meant to be revisited. You don't owe explanations to everyone. But there may be moments where explaining yourself isn't a threat. It's an invitation. To be known. To connect. To test whether the world is still as unsafe as your instincts say it is. So take a moment and notice. When you go quiet, what are you protecting? Energy? Meaning? Autonomy? Yourself? And just as importantly, who might actually be safe enough to hear you? Which version of silence sounds most like you?